Hello everyone and welcome to .NET Core Central. In today's video, I'm going to continue working with Blazor and .NET 5. And in today's video, I'm going to specifically focus on unit testing Blazor applications. If you have not watched my previous videos in Blazor, I'm going to share the link down in the descriptions. I strongly encourage you to watch the previous couple of videos so that you can understand the basic and get a continuity from the previous application. I'm going to use the same application that I started in my previous video. What I'm going to do is, for testing the application, it is better to have some text box, button, and some sort of actions in the page for it to be a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to change the index.razor and I'm going to add some HTML inside of it. And for that, I'm just going to copy paste a code snippet. And as you can see, it has an email address text box, a password text box, a submit button for logging, and then there is an error message team. So it's just a plain HTML for the user to log in. And now I'm going to create a CS file for index.razor for the code behind. So I'm going to add a new class and I'm going to name it as index.razor.cs. Once the class is created, I'm going to name it as partial. And then I'm also going to have a login property which has email and password. So for that, I'm going to create a login class, and which is going to have two properties. And let's rename these to login model, which is login and password. And then here in the index, I'm going to have private login model login is equal to name. And now if I go here, sorry, the property name should be email, not login. So now if I go here, the red squiggly should be gone for this too. And then I need a login function inside of the index.razor.cs. So I'm going to create private void, or I can just create async task login. That's about it. And then this is gone. And the third thing I need is an error message, which is a string. So I'm going to go and have private string message is an empty string. Now you might see this syntax that I'm using, new of just open close bracket. This is something which is introduced with .NET 5 and C#9, where you can just use new and open close bracket to create a new instance of the object which you are declaring on the other side. Now I don't have any red squiggly on this side. And to make things a little bit interesting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new interface and class for providing the logging functionality. So I'm going to go and create a class called login processor, which will have public this should be email because I'm just using email. And here for the time being, I'm just going to return true. Well, given it's a task and I don't have an await statement, it's throwing red squiggly, so I'm just going to go ahead and say return true. And I'll extract an interface out of the login processor. Next, in the index.razor.cs class, I need to inject the login processor. So I'll do private I login processor and of course I have to use the inject attribute so that this is injected by the dependency injection container. And here then in the login method, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to validate email and validate the password, and based on that I'm going to allow it to continue. So I can say if if validate email and validate password, then just use the login processor dot login and pass the login dot email and login dot password to this method. So we can say if this is successful, then nothing, but if it is not successful, then put an error message, invalid login, right? And if the email or password is not valid, here can do again set an error message, email or password invalid. And then let me quickly create a couple of methods. Private bool validate email and private bool validate password. And here all I'm going to do is return string dot is null or empty of login dot email, just for simplicity not. So if it is not null or empty, and similarly for validate password, just password for the time being. And that's about it. So now everything is set up in this one. Next thing we have to do is we have to create the dependency injection for the login processor. So here I would go and I would say builder dot services dot add scoped, and I can say I login processor login processor. That's about it. And now I can run this application and just to see if the UI is created as expected, because we have not seen the UI yet. And now, yeah, I see the email address and password, and then submit. And the submit, on clicking of submit, it is showing email password invalid because I have not passed anything. So my validation is also working as expected. Now that the code is ready, let's start doing some unit testing. So for unit testing, I'm going to just go ahead and create a new unit test project. And I'm going to create a new project, and here I'm going to select an NUnit test project, go to the next, and I'm going to name it as blazor.demo.unit test, and I'm going to create. And once the project is created, I'm going to go to the properties and I'll make sure I convert to .NET 5. And once it is in .NET 5, the next thing to do is add reference to the Blazor demo. That's one thing we have to do. And now finally, what we have to do is we have to add the unit testing framework, which works with NUnit, of course, for Blazor, but specifically Blazor based unit testing framework. So for that, I'm going to go to manage NuGet package, and then here I'm going to find bUnit.web. And I have to select include pre-release because the bUnit is currently in beta. So I'm going to select the bUnit.web. As of this video recording, it's version 1.0.0 beta 11, and that's what I'm going to install. And the next thing I'm going to install is I'm going to install the mock framework, the MOQ. I'll be doing some mocking, hence using the mock framework. And this seems to be working. Now it's time to write some unit test. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a test context. So I can say private bUnit dot test context, and in the setup I can come on in here and I can say test context is equal to new of bUnit.text context, and then this is going to set up. And if I have a similarly teardown method, and in the teardown method I can say test context dot dispose So for the first test, let us test what happens when email and password is not provided. So we can say no email password condition, and here we're going to start. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the test context, and then we're going to add the necessary configurations. So dot, what do we have in the dependency injection that we need? We need to have the login processor added, so we can go ahead and before we do that, let's declare here private mock, let me add the namespace I login processor, set the namespace, and login processor is the variable, and here we can initialize it to new of login processor. So here now we can do again test context dot services dot add scoped, and then I'm going to go ahead and say to login processor dot object. So this is going to set up the iLogin processor dependency with the mocked login processor in the dependency injection. So my dependency injection is now set up. Next thing what I'm going to do is, after the dependency injection is set up, so after that is done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var component is equal to test context dot render component of index. So when I do that, it is going to try to render the component, and then let's do some testing. So what do we want to test first? First we want to test and make sure that this is the index page. So how do we identify that? Well, we can try to see if the hello world HTML exists in this component, and for that what we can do is we can say assert dot is true, and we can say component dot markup dot contains, and we can provide this HTML. So this will verify whether the text exists in the HTML or not. Second thing, let's verify, for example, if this button exists and there is only one button. So what we can do that, we can say buttons equal to component dot find all, and find all is part of the bUnit namespace. So let me add it, and here I'm going to do button, and then I can say assert dot r equal, and I'm going to say 1, and then buttons dot count. So there should be only one button. And then the next thing I'm going to do is let me find the submit button. So for that I'll say var, I can, at this point I can just use buttons of 0, but I'm just going to show how we can find specific button from this one. I can use plain and simple link query. So I can say buttons dot fast or faster default. Let me add the link namespace. Goes to button dot outer HTML dot contains, and I can look for submit. So this will give the submit button, and then I can say assert dot is not null of submit. So this will ensure that the submit button is not null. And then finally we are going to check the condition no email password condition. To test that, what do we have to do? We have to click the submit. Now for that we can do as simple as submit dot click. You see, this is an extension method which is provided by bUnit. So we can just call it, and you can see here this method raises an on-click event on the element passing the provided properties. So we can just call this, and this is going to raise the on-click event. And if you remember, the on-click event here is calling the logging function. So this is going to call the logging function. Now when we call the logging function, what's going to happen? It is going to validate the email ID and password, which is going to return false. So it is just going to go and put this error message in, and it is not going to call login processor. So once we do that, we can validate using a couple of things. We can do is the login processor mock, and we can say login processor dot verify, and we can say login processor login dot login method, which contains two string. So for that we can do it dot is any of string, which means any string passed as a email, and then any string passed as a password, and then it should never be called. So it's going to have times dot never. So this should never be called because the validation would have failed. So this should verify that the condition, the email, no password condition was successfully executed, because the login processor would not have been called due to this validation failure. So let's try and run this. Running, I can just go and run all test, and I can open up the test explorer. And you can see here my test was successfully passed. Now to show that it is working as expected, I'm going to put a breakpoint in the login method, and I'm going to debug this test method just to show you that it's working as expected. And now if I debug this, I can see it is coming here, and these two are going to be false. Going to set the error message, and login processor was never called, and it will come out of this function successful. Now let's test the next condition, which is public void proper email password condition. Now as you can see, the test that I wrote, it pretty much covers most of the basic condition that we would ever need during an unit testing of Blazor. It covers figuring out HTML, it covers getting handle to buttons, it covers getting handle and executing a click on a button. It also covers calling the internal dependencies used. Now one thing which is not covered is setting the text boxes. So that is something we are going to cover right now. So now just I'm going to copy paste this couple of lines because we are going to need this. This is common. This is something we could have added to the setup itself. For the time being, I'm just going to continue the way it is. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the button as well. So let's copy this too. And I'm not going to verify the button anymore because we already verified in the previous test statement. The next thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide the email and the password. So for email, I'm going to say var email equal to component dot find. Just like find all, we can do find. And find works, if you look into the method, it returns an element from the rendered fragment or component under test using provided CSS selector. CSS selector is something you would be probably used to if you have worked on jQuery. It's nothing but a simple CSS query for which we can use ID or CSS class or any HTML hierarchy. So here I'm going to use the ID. So I'm going to say hash agent email is the email, and similarly for password I'm going to say hash agent password, and then I want to set the value. So for setting the value, we can say email dot change, and you can see change raises on change event on the element passing the provided properties. So you can say change, and here you can say test email. And similarly for password, we can say password dot change, and password is a test password. And after that, I'm going to do submit.click, just like before. And then now this time I'm going to verify that the login processor was executed only once. So say login processor dot verify, and I can say login processor, and I'm just going to copy this line and make the change. So I'm going to say once here. So login processor was the login method of the login processor with any string was called at least once. So this will verify. The next thing I want to do is, which I did not do in the previous test, is I want to verify that the error message was also set. So for that, I want login processor to return false. So what am I going to do is, before I execute this, I'm going to say login processor dot setup, and then I just copy paste part of the code, setup dot returns false. So if it returns false, then what is going to happen is it will get called once, but there will be a message in this div alert. So how do we get this div alert? Well, what we can do is we can say var alert is equal to component.find, and here, as I mentioned earlier, given it's a CSS selector, we can say div dot alert, because dot alert is the class name. So if you see the div and the class name is dot alert, so we can do div dot alert to access this particular component. So this will give the alert, and then what we can do is we can say assert.r equal, and here we can provide the text from this message here, which is invalid login. And what should be the invalid login is the alert dot inner HTML. Now if we run this test, it should be all green. And we can also, of course, debug this to show that it's working as expected. So if you see, it's green, but if I just put a breakpoint here, debug, just to show, see this time it's going inside, it's getting executed, the login will be unsuccessful, so the error message will be set as invalid login, and when we come here we can see that the inner HTML is invalid login. So that's the test. So as you can see how easy and convenient it is to do unit testing with bUnit. It's extremely straightforward. If you are familiar with any unit testing framework, I'm using NUnit, but it works with Xunit as well. So if you are familiar with unit testing framework, if you are familiar with any mocking framework, I'm using MOQ here, you can use anything else. It is pretty straightforward and it works with those, and executing the component and getting access to the HTML elements of the components is extremely simple. As long as if you have worked with jQuery or anything like that, it should be super simple for you. If not, it's not very hard. It is just using some CSS selector for finding, and then for everything else pretty much there are extension method. For example, for changing text box values, you can use the change extension method. For clicking, it is click. And I think within these two test functions, majority of the cases would be covered. I'm sure there are other cases where I would need to use something else, but to me it looks like this is probably 80% of the time what we will be dealing with, between changing text box, clicking button, and finding out some divs or elements inside of the HTML and verifying those. So that's all I wanted to cover for today's video. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you are new to my channel, and if you think you are getting value out of my channel, please subscribe to my channel. And thanks so much for watching this video.